Hello, 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 and welcome back to I'm the Pappy Podcast. I'm your host, Veda Green. I sound so professional when I say that, don't I? Well, I promised you, I didn't promise, but I said in the last video that I would come back and do another video. This is what I found about podcasting. Video podcasting is a lot different from audio podcasting because with audio podcasting, you can just start talking. It doesn't matter if you got cold in your eye or your hair's in a bonnet or you have, food in your teeth. It doesn't matter. But when you're doing a video podcast, you have to present yourself in a cleaner way. So I got this face on, I got this lip gloss on, I got these earrings on, my hair got, it's a little bit, got some little bit goings on still. So I figured I'd come back and record another podcast or another video. All right, so here I am. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe to this channel. This is all new for me, and I am so thrilled and so excited to be doing this. In the first video, I talked about how it all started and how I was dragging my feet about doing it because I didn't really know how. Well, I'm so glad. I wish I would have started earlier. So I didn't, but I am now. So let's get started. I wanted to share with you where it really all started. I'm not going to take you all the way back to the beginning of my life, but that's kind of where it really all started. As you know, this podcast is called I'm the Pappy because it is taking the perspective of fatherhood and fathers and the importance of fathers and their relationships with their children and connecting it to our true and ultimate Father, who is God. So I get the opportunity to share my story and my journey from daddyless girl to a daddy's girl. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm very transparent. I don't hide anything, but I don't put all my business out in the street either, but the transformation that happened in my life, I have to share the testimony and I have to share the journey. So I just want to start at the beginning. I grew up without my dad, and a lot of people grew up without their dad. So you can relate to this story if you don't have a father or didn't grow up with your father. Well, I didn't grow up with my dad. And to be honest with you, I didn't really miss it. I didn't miss my dad not being there because I was surrounded by so much love. When I was born, my mom and dad were together. My father was an alcoholic. I don't like to say that he's still an alcoholic because he doesn't drink, but he was an alcoholic. So there was times when he went through rehab and things were better and things got better for my family, my mom, my dad, my sisters. And so when he was doing better, they were in love. My mom and dad, honestly, I think they're still in love, even though they're not together now. But in the times when things were good, they decided to give it one more college try and have another baby because my mom and dad, my parents had two girls and they were just perhaps might get a boy. Well, as you can see, they didn't get a boy, but I was born into the family and I was surrounded by love. There was so much love. I said I wasn't going to go back to the beginning, but I got to tell you this part. There was so much love surrounding me that my mom had 3 baby showers. My sister sold tickets to the neighborhood kids to come see me when they brought me home from the hospital. And my mother tells a story about how all of these kids were ringing the doorbell and knocking on the door, asking if they could see me. And my mother didn't know where all these kids were coming from. Well, my sister was selling tickets for them to come see me. And she was saying, come see the most beautiful baby in the world. Come see my baby sister. So I've always been surrounded by that type of love. So much so that I didn't have the opportunity to miss my father's presence, or so I thought. As I got older, I created in my mind a story about my father, because now let's back up a little bit. I knew my dad. It wasn't that he was absent and, gone. Like I knew him. He lived in the same city that we lived in while I was growing up. So it wasn't like I had an absent father or and he wasn't, I didn't know him. I knew of him. I knew his identity. I knew my dad, but I didn't grow up with him in the home with me. And I didn't have a very close relationship with him. Number one, because of the alcohol. And number two, because of his choices. And we'll leave that alone. So I was always surrounded by love. And before I tell you about the story about the story I made up about my dad, I was surrounded with 4 walls of love. My mom, my sister, my oldest sister, my older sister, and my auntie. So I had a wall of love around me. So I didn't miss out on being loved and accepted and nurtured. So there wasn't a part of me that missed my father. And I grew up in Section 8 housing, the projects, low-income homes. And in order to live there, couldn't have a father living in the home. So I didn't see a lot of kids with dads. So I didn't miss that I didn't have a father. Like I didn't feel like I was missing anything. And I was surrounded by father figures. I had a godfather who we call Mr. J, who loved me, who did all of the father things. Then in church, I had my Uncle Jonas, who was my best friend. Shout out to Stephanie, my best friend's dad, who included me in everything that he did with his daughters. I was right there next to them. And then I had my Uncle Julian at church, who, was my Pathfinder leader, my youth group leader. Then I had my papa. I adopted a grandfather who was my papa, who I never missed any love. Like, so I didn't miss my dad. So, and I keep saying, and I made up an imaginary figure in my mind of who my father was. I found a picture of my dad in a drawer, and he had on an army uniform. He was about 18 or 19 or something like that. And when I saw the picture of him, I made up in my mind that my father was this great military man that had gone, got promoted through the ranks, and he was living in a country in Europe, and he would come back. He's going to be coming back, and he's going to build a house for us, and we're going to live on a hill. We're going to live in a nice neighborhood with the picket fence and the dog, and all the things, all the Brady Bunch things I saw on television. That was how I had formulated in my mind my dad, what my dad would do. I told the story so well that the kids in my neighborhood actually believed it. And they would ask me, hey, when's your dad coming? Veda, when's your dad coming? And I was like, he's coming. He's in Europe or, out Asia. I would make up something, some country. I would pick a country on the map because I would read a lot. So I was by myself a lot. So I had time to imagine and to read. So I would just pick a country, France, someplace in Europe, and tell them that that's where my dad was. And it was so bad, y'all, that I had them believing he was bringing them presents too. Like I threw that in there too. When my dad comes, I've told him about my friends. He's going to bring presents for you guys too. Like I laid it on thick. So the imagination was great. I'd made up who my dad was until he knocked on the door and was riding a bike in some jeans and a t-shirt or some jean shorts or something and a t-shirt, telling me, hey, this is your dad. I want to introduce you to your cousins who live around the corner from you. So this whole picture that I painted of my father was shattered. But by that time, I kind of had developed that, it was okay. It was what it was. I didn't realize that I was really being impacted. because of that wall around me, that wall of love around me. My mother never spoke poorly of my father. She simply said, your dad's an alcoholic. That's the reason why we're not together. You know, if he didn't drink, we could have a family. So it wasn't like she sat around and was talking about how he wasn't any good. He was a deadbeat dad. And she never spoke poorly of him. So I didn't have these seeds planted in me that I had a terrible father, but it was impacting me and I didn't know it. So fast forward to, when I was 12 years old when the ties were totally cut between me and my father. It was the time that he slapped me. And I felt like he did not have the right to do that because he didn't raise me. I'd gone to his house. I was going on a trip and I was asking him if he could help, fund the trip, if he could help, kick something, a couple dollars toward the trip. And he said something about your mother works. She should be paying for it or something. He said something and it boiled me the wrong way. Got my blood kind of warm because that's my mama. She raised me. I didn't grow up with you. You weren't around, the least you could do is give me $50 for this trip. And now, mind you, he had wads of money on his table. I don't know how or why. I don't know that part of the story, but I remember there were rolled up wads of money. And I'm looking at all this money like, you can't kick me $50, $100. Like you can't do, but you're going to talk about my mother who works her fingers to the bone, who's provided for me, all of the things. And I jumped up because I was angry. And he said, I'm your father. You respect me in my house. Sit down, he said to me. And I didn't sit down. And he got up. Now, my dad is 6'4". Well, he might not be 6'4" now because he's old. He probably shrunk a little bit. But at that time, he was in his prime of his life, 6'4", hands almost twice the size of my hands. And he walked over to me. He took my glasses off and he slapped me. And I think I saw all my life, just everything kind of around because his hands were so big. And he pushed me back down in the chair and he tossed my glasses to me. He said, you respect me. I'm your father. And at that moment, it was like something in my soul, my spirit just was like, I'm done with him. He don't never got to do nothing for me. And when I walked out of that house and I got in the car with my aunt, I told her and I slammed the door of her car and I said, he doesn't ever have to do anything for me, ever. And I was done. I was done with my father. And there were times, when I would try to navigate through all of the stuff I was going through as a teenager and, just stuff, but I still never missed my dad. I didn't miss my dad until I asked him to walk me down the aisle. By this time, I was 22, 23. So 10 years had passed. Not that I hadn't seen my dad or talked to my dad in those 10 years. There was just something inside of me that I really just didn't. I was done, but he was still there. He was still around. So I would still see him and I would still engage with him, but I didn't have any feelings for him. But as I got older, I want you to come to my graduation. He didn't come to my high school graduation. I asked him to come to my college graduation. He didn't come to my college graduation. I asked him, to help me with my senior pictures or my class ring, and he didn't help me. So, and I don't know what my father did behind the scenes. So this isn't a bash my daddy podcast because he probably helped my mom. I just don't know. But based on this is my experience. This is my story. This is my side of it. So I would still see my dad and talk to him, at, little times here and there. But that day when he hit me, it broke me. It broke my feelings about him. And that was it. But I figured, I'm getting married. I want him to walk me down the aisle. And I asked him, would he walk me down the aisle? Would he give me away? And he said, no, I'm not walking you down the aisle, giving you away to some heathen. Well, at 23, I didn't understand. I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, what do you mean, heathen? What does that mean? We go to church, we know God, and he just didn't. He didn't walk me down the aisle. I ended up going to the justice of the peace, not because he didn't walk me down the aisle, it was just what we did. And when we had a ceremony, my uncle came, his brother came and stood in his place. And then there's more. After that, there's still this, you should honor your father, because I go to church and I'm reading the Bible and I'm seeing, honor your father and mother so that your days will be long in the land that the Lord thy God has given thee. That's the 5th commandment. And every time I would read that scripture, every time I would see that commandment, I would cringe because I wasn't honoring my father, because there was nothing in me that really cared about him. But there was still a part of me that felt like I needed to bridge the relationship. I needed to reach out. I needed to try to make it better. I needed to honor him because I want my days to be long in the land. I mean, hey, that's the first commandment with a promise, and I want the promise. So if I want to have long days in the land, I need to honor my father and my mother. So that's what I tried to do. At the time, I didn't realize that it was his responsibility to bridge the gap between us because he is my father. But I spent a lot of my years reaching out to him, trying to make a relationship. I did that for years. There was a part of me that didn't, it's kind of like it was contradictory. When he hit me at 12, it broke my spirit. It broke something in me. And I didn't want to have anything to do with him. Yet there was a part of me that felt like if I'm a Christian, if I say I love God, then I should be honoring my father. I should be doing something to honor my dad. So I went through years and years misunderstanding what it meant to honor him. To honor my father. To honor someone means to value them, to respect them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be in relationship with them. But I didn't know that. And I kept reaching out and I kept getting my feelings hurt and kept reaching out and kept getting my feelings hurt. And it really got to the point where actually it was just this year, last year, Father's Day, when I called him, because this is a whole story. I mean, this is a lot to this story. I can't even tell you all in this one sitting. Like I'm going to have to come back and share more. But I kept trying to fix it. And I couldn't fix it. So my relationship with my earthly father mirrored my relationship with my heavenly father. I kept trying to make God love me. I kept trying to live right. I kept trying not to sin. I kept trying to be the best that I could be so God would love me, just like I did with my dad. Reaching out to him, showing him I'm a good girl. I graduated from high school at the top of my class. Can you come to my graduation? I graduated from college, the first one in the family to graduate from college. Can you come to my graduation? I want to get married. I want to walk down the aisle. Will you give me away? Will you walk down the aisle? Will you show me? Can you tell me how to make cornbread? My dad was a former chef. Can you tell me how to make yams like you do? Can you show me? Can you tell me? Because I was trying to connect to him. And I didn't know that was because of the breach in the relationship. But my whole life I spent trying to get my dad to see me and to love me. Even though when he hit me, it broke something in me, there was still this part of me that was like, can't you see me? Can't you love me? You know, and so I spent a lot of my years performing. I performed for every male figure in my life. I had to be good and perfect and pretty and smart and stylish. I had to be the best of the best, flawless, so that I could be loved because of the relationship that I had with my father. And there's more, and as I'm talking, more is even coming up that I didn't even think about. But there was a part of me that as a little girl, I didn't miss my dad because of all of the love, but I miss my dad. As a matter of fact, this memory just came back to me. When I was little, I used to find things around the house for Christmas or Father's Day, and I would wrap them up, mostly for Christmas. And I would wrap them and put them under the tree for him. Because Christmas was the great time. Everything good happened at Christmas. So I would wrap a gift, I'd find something in a drawer and wrap it up and put it under the tree, hoping he would come home for Christmas, like they do in the Hallmark movies. And he never did. And something inside of me, unaware, I wasn't aware of it because I was a child, but it was building this feeling of rejection, abandonment. So I had to make myself good enough to be loved. I had to perform just right to be loved, to attract love to me. The same thing showed up in my relationship with God. God just loves me, period. Point blank, period. I ain't got to do anything. But I didn't know that. So I went into performance mode, even with God. When I sinned, I felt horrible. The guilt was terrible. I was at the altar every week asking God to forgive me for something. Make me righteous. Make me clean. Help me not to sin. I'm so sorry. I was always begging for love through forgiveness, or being afraid that I'm going to be struck down someplace because I was someplace I wasn't supposed to be, and it made God angry. So I was going to be killed at that spot, on the dot, on the spot. Like there was so much. I can't even unpack all of it now. I'm just going to keep sharing the story. I'll just keep sharing the story. But from this part of my journey, I want to share that the relationship that I had with my father, my earthly father, directly impacted or impacted, because it's not the same now. I'm free. Impacted the way that I saw God as my father. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know him as father, and we'll talk about that on another podcast. But it was that performance, and I performed for everybody. I needed validation. I needed to be told that I was good enough, because I didn't get that from my father. I got it from my mom. I got it from my sisters. I got it from my aunt. So there was this false padding around me, but I didn't get it from my dad, which I didn't realize until I got older, when I was performing for the pastor, when I was performing for my principal, when I was performing for my husband, my first husband, former husband, when I was performing, trying to get someone to pay attention to me, to see me as worthy and good. Of course, I got it from my mom and my sisters. I didn't have issues there. But when it came to men, there was this lack of validation that I got from my dad that caused me to act out or perform in a way to get that validation. I didn't know that I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't know that I was already good enough because of who I am and whose I am. So if you struggle with validation and rejection and abandonment, especially as it relates to your father, I want you to know that there is freedom on the other side of acceptance of who you are and whose you are. It doesn't matter if your father loved you. It doesn't matter if he showed up. It doesn't matter. The father that you have on earth has nothing to do with the father that's in heaven. He is a good, good father. His love is unconditional. It's nothing that you have to do to earn it. There's nothing that you can do to lose it. You don't have to tap dance on stage under the spotlight to get his love and his affection. You are already righteous. You are his righteousness through Jesus Christ. You are complete. You are whole through Jesus. You have a father who loves you. You have a father who cares. And his name is Yahweh. He is your father. He's your provider. He is provision. He is everything. And guess what? He thinks you're everything too. So I wanted to share just how it all started and the direction that I've gone and the journey that I've taken. And I'll be back. I'll be back. Will I be wearing the same outfit? I don't know. I might. I might. But seriously, I just want you to know that you are loved. Your father loves you. Your father loves you. That's it. I'll be back. New episode, maybe a new outfit. I'm not sure, but thank you for joining me. Please share this. Please subscribe, and we'll be back the next time. I'm the Pappy, Veda Green. Take care.